Welcome to the Greg Bennett Show. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and this was a wonderful conversation with a remarkable athlete, academic, and author, Alistair Brownlee. This special edition is in two parts, and in part one, we discuss Alistair's new book, Relentless, Secrets of the Sporting Elite. Over the last 4 years, Alistair has been on a journey to learn from the very best, talking to elite figures across multiple sports, as well as leading thinkers and scientists to just understand what enabled these remarkable individuals to rise to the very top and to push the limits of human capability in their relentless pursuit of perfection. We discuss why he decided to write the book, what the interview process was like, how he chose the specific people, and what he learned from the interviews. We discuss what is talent, what is a champion, and I share several great quotes from the book. But before we go on, a quick little bit of housekeeping. Firstly, thank you so much for listening. And if you are enjoying the show, you'd be doing a massive favor if you could just share it on your social platforms. Or you can support the show's partners, Form, Hyperice, and Athletic Greens. They're all great companies with fantastic products. I hope you enjoy part one, and remember, success comes to those who endure just one moment longer. A quick mention of the show's partners. These are all great companies and products that I use daily. If you want to support the show, you'd be doing me a massive favor by supporting these brands. This episode is brought to you by Hyperice. Hyperice is my go-to solution for recovery and restoration. The handheld percussion therapy devices, the Normatec boots, and the vibrating rollers all release your deepest muscle tension and just aid your recovery. I own the Hypervolt Plus, I own the Hypervolt Go, the Normatec boots, and the vibrating rollers. And both my wife Laura and I use them every day before and after workouts and before bed. They're all just so easy to use at home. They're quiet, easy to charge, and have ready at any time. I encourage you to look after your body. Honestly, it's the only thing you get to keep for all of your life. All these Hyperice products are just simply brilliant. Get 10% off all Hyperice products using the exclusive Greg Bennett Show code GREG21 at checkout. Go to hyperice.com, that's hyperice.com, hyperice.com, and use code GREG21 at checkout. This episode is brought to you by my longtime partner and amazing company and brilliant product, Athletic Greens. I'm using Athletic Greens every day. Great taste, so quick and ready to go. Athletic Greens is a delicious blend of 75 superfoods and vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and a greens blend and more to support gut health, energy, and immunity and stress. I've also been doubling down on Athletic Greens vitamin D. A huge portion of the population are vitamin D deficient, myself included. And right now, Athletic Greens will give you a year's supply of vitamin D for free and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Do yourself a favor and sign up. It makes a great gift for a family member or a friend. So sign up now and get a free year of supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. This episode is brought to you by Form. In my opinion, Form Smart Swim Goggles are the biggest thing to hit the swimming world. With Form Smart Swim Goggles, you can see all your key metrics while you're swimming: your distance, your pace, stroke rate, and heart rate. The swim data is displayed on the goggle lens, and you can customize the display to see the key metrics that you want to see. I couldn't believe it when I first tried them. They fit like normal, comfortable goggles, and the display is there, but it's not in the way. I consciously look at the lens to see my stroke rate and my pace and my heart rate and distance. If you're a pool swimmer or an open water swimmer, I encourage you to check these goggles out. Please go to formswim.com/Greg. Again, that is formswim.com/Greg and get $15 off the Form Smart Swim Goggles at checkout, or use code GREG2021 at checkout. All right, today I have a very special return guest. He's arguably the greatest triathlete of all time. He is the undisputed greatest Olympic triathlete in history, with gold in London and Rio Olympic Games. His world and Olympic titles are remarkable, but it has been his ability to lift the sport to new heights and have every athlete in the world chasing that has truly set him apart. It has been this dominance that has me in awe of this extraordinary athlete. He was last on the show in episode 15. If you haven't listened to that episode, I'd encourage you to go check it out. It's an enormous privilege to have a good mate, champion athlete, and an exceptional author back on the show. So welcome and thanks for joining me on the Greg Bennett Show. Alistair Brownlee, how are you, mate?
Hey, I'm very well, thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
All right. Yeah, mate. Did I see that you've just had an ankle operation? Did you go through that?
Yeah, I did. I had it 7 days ago now. And so I'm sat here as we speak with my ankle raised as it's swollen and a bit bloody. But I actually got the bandages off the other day. And yeah, fortunately, the wounds are looking good and stuff. And I can actually weight bear and walk around on it now, which is so much better than having a fully mummified ankle.
Wow. Is that the same one that you had the Achilles issues with, or is it the other?
I've had Achilles issues on both of them, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but basically, yeah, most of my body's had some kind of issue now at some point. But yeah, this is the ankle. I had an operation on it 6 years ago now, and yeah, it turned out that it was basically, even though I hadn't had a single issue actually with this ankle in any of those 6 years, it's been really good. It's not actually Achilles, it's the other tendons in the posterior ankle there. There's three of them, and they for some reason, get scarred up and they get adhesions, and I get loads of scar tissue in there. And the doctors basically think there's been a build-up of scar tissue there over the last 6 years. And I was saying, well, I've had no symptoms until about 3 months ago, where I had a lot of symptoms very quickly. And so it didn't seem to quite make sense to me, but apparently, yeah, without a lot of what I could have done about it, it's just issues build up over time, and you get to the point where that scarring builds up to the point where it restricts some kind of movement on a tendon, and then you start feeling symptoms and you get pain. And yeah, unfortunately, that happened about 3 months ago.
Oh, mate. Well, I'm sorry to hear that it happened sort of at this time, although we are going to get to your book, but there was one Chinese parable that you have in your book, and I really loved that because I think it was a great way to look at life. And basically it was, I'm going to get it all wrong because I don't have it in front of me, but a Chinese farm that was very poor had one horse, and it was him and his son, and the horse escapes and comes back with a multitude of wild horses, and everybody in the village says, oh, good luck. Well, they said bad luck for losing the horse, and then good luck for, that you got all the horses back. And then his son broke his ankle or leg riding one of the wild horses, and they said, oh, that's bad luck. But then there was a war broke out, and they said, and his son couldn't go to war, and they said, oh, that's good luck. And it's kind of like this, I look at you throughout your career, you've had these good moments and you've had these bad moments, and but I think there's always big things to come. Is that how you're looking at this?
Yeah, well, actually, in two ways. Well, three ways. The first way is I know that I actually couldn't have done anything differently, and I take a lot of solace in that. I was looking after myself as well as I could. I was training as effectively as I could. Had the best team around me I've ever had in terms of looking after things and medical support. So I really feel I couldn't have done anything differently. The second way is I've had a decent amount of luck in the past. And it'd be silly to sit here saying I would change anything, having won the Olympics twice, because for sure anything that potentially would have changed either of those outcomes would be ridiculous. And the third thing is, I'm very thankful for all that. And the third thing is, these things happen, and in a sporting career, obviously it's a cliche, but you have your ups and downs, and I'm looking forward to getting over this and just doing what I love, which is training hard and competing.
Well, it's a good mindset to have. And look, today I want to discuss your book, Relentless, Secrets of a Sporting Elite. And then I want to discuss, the Olympics and your predictions and how you feel about them, and the sport as a whole. There's a lot to cover. But I want to start with your book, Relentless. Firstly, huge congratulations. As I said to you pre-show, I've rarely read a book in 2.5 days, little less with a 1 and a 3-year-old running around. But your book just had me enthralled from the very first page to the very end. So just a massive congratulations on pulling it all together. It's just simply brilliant. When is it release? When does it come out?
Well, firstly, thank you very much. It's great to hear. An awful lot of effort went into that book, and some late nights along the way. But so it's released. You can pre-order it now on Amazon, and it'll be released on actually the 5th of July. And you can buy it from most good bookshops. Is what we say in Britain. I don't know if that applies to listeners all over the world, but hopefully.
No, that's for sure. Well, this episode's coming out July 5th, so it's out today, everybody. No more pre-ordering. Once you hear this, you can go grab it. And I've got to tell you, it's worth the read. I can just tell it was a lot of work. What actually surprised me and blew me away, and I don't mean this to sound condescending, or I was amazed how well you write. From the introduction, you had me. It was this the way, I think there's the way you write, but it's also the way your mind works, which is very much in what this podcast is a lot about. Trying to understand how the greats work. I guess let's start with, why did you decide to write the book? What was the inkling?
Yeah, well, thank you for a compliment on my writing. It was a combination of I got a lot of help from a co-writer, not a ghostwriter, but a co-writer. And I got a lot of help from Duncan, both in terms of the writing, but also learning, I guess, a style and writing something actually I've always really loved, apart from when I was at school. But since then, I picked up an enjoyment of it. And and just a way of articulating and getting down thoughts and beliefs and opinions. It's something I worked on hard. That's I based it quite a lot on something I'd like to read at the end of the day, and try not to be guided too much by what I thought should be written. And I think the other thing is it adapted. It was it was a bit of a process right from the start, which is where I wanted to write the book, just because I thought it was a good idea. Obviously, I got a bit of asked a few people, and other people thought it was a good idea, worth doing. And then a publisher was interested, and so started about the process. But I also wanted to write the book because I wanted to learn about writing a book. I write all sorts of things all the time, but I wanted to actually learn about writing a book, and it's something I want to do more of, for sure. And I'm already thinking about the next one. So that's the second reason. It gave me it gave me this fantastic opportunity to go and explore a subject that I'm absolutely fascinated in, which is the workings and minds of people who perform on the highest level continuously over a long period of time. Gave me the opportunity and excuse to go seek these people out and have those conversations. And like I talk about in the book, some of those conversations happened in the most, actually, although there was a book there, but in the most naturally brilliant, fascinating environment. Like when I went and sat down with the snooker legend Ronnie O'Sullivan while his mum cooked his dinner and we sat down in his kitchen and just talked about his career, performance, and life over his mum's lasagna.
I think that's what I loved about the book. There was this you were talking to these incredible human beings all around the world, sometimes in person, sometimes the struggles of trying to do it remotely. But you talk about that. There's this, when Mark Webber's flying in on his helicopter and the way you describe that, and then he comes in and, you guys are just hanging out, having a glass of water each. But you get the feeling that you're there and you're a part of the conversation. And that's a gift in itself that I think you've created there, that, and even the burden of trying to just lock down an Ian Thorpe across the world and trying to get your time slots right and stuff. I really enjoyed that kind of behind the scenes of trying to get these interviews together. I thought that was a really fun way that you put it all together.
Yeah, thank you. So my first idea for the book was a really kind of structured process of each chapter would be around, the things that we all probably think are kind of important. for performance, motivation, conviction, inspiration, obsessiveness. And of each of those chapters, the kind of outline plan was a little anecdote from me. I go out and talk to people, get various opinions, actually including a bit more hardcore science, and then wrap it up into some kind of interesting take home at the end. But as I started writing it and putting it together, I completely changed my mind away from that, because I enjoyed so much writing about the experience of the interviews, and exactly the thing with Ronnie, the experience of, there's a cyclist daughter called Beryl Burton that you'll have to read the book more to find out about. Probably the most impressive athlete you've never heard of. She's unfortunately passed away now, but I went for a bike ride with her daughter on a bike pathway named after her, and just those kind of insights and the personal stuff was the bits that I actually really enjoyed writing about. And so, yeah, the kind of structure for the book completely changed about halfway through.
I think that was almost, I would say, out of the book, that was almost the most special feature, the human side of it all. That you really humanized these people that we tend to put on massive pedestals, and rightly so for many of them. They've done extraordinary things, but I think it was this sitting down and having a cup of tea with these fantastic footballers and all of these people. And I loved him. One of them was the football. What was his name?
Dennis Irwin.
Dennis Irwin. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. And you guys were sitting down in a coffee shop in a shopping mall, and one of the kids came up and asked you for an autograph or whatever, wanted to talk to you, and here you're sitting with this legend, in the football, and you felt a little bit embarrassed, but he was okay with it, and it was this real. I enjoyed that. It was kind of like how you felt and he felt, and these two rock star athletes, and but he was just a generation older, and so the kid didn't know him, and I love that kind of feeling, and I love some of the quotes. I said in the introduction, you say, "I'm not trying to break the sporting equivalent of the magician's code here. I simply have an inkling that just maybe others at the top of their sport might be more human than we think." And that, to me, is what this humanizing of these incredible athletes really was all about. How many years did it take you to pull all this together?
Too many is a short answer. I started the project in the idea, and it started coming together at the back end of 2017, the very end of 2017, and kind of slow start. But it was actually ready to go pretty much in early 2020. January 2020 signed off for the first time after, like any big project, somewhat of a rush to finish it. Even though I'd had all that time to do it, I think the last 3 chapters were done in the last month or so. But then obviously COVID got in the way. I actually was really keen to get it out, as during COVID I didn't have a lot else to do apart from go for a bike ride in the sun and read a book. So I thought it'd be a fantastic opportunity to get a book out. The publisher just said, "Hold your nerve and bring it out next year." And I just, as I played around with it and thought a bit more, then I actually added a chapter to it. And for a few reasons, an opportunity came up to speak to a few more people that I was interested in speaking to. But at the same time, I wanted to kind of put COVID in context a bit. And obviously with moving around to sporting events in COVID. And so, yeah, I added a chapter on there at the end with 3 interesting people. And yeah, so then it was ready to go in early in the year after lots of processes of backwards and forwards over the months to try and make sure there's no mistakes in it and inaccuracies. And then actually in the last few weeks, I've been narrating the audiobook myself, which was when I first heard it, I thought, no one wants to hear me speak for hours on end. I'm just going to put everyone to sleep. And the publisher said, no, it always works so much better when the author reads his own audiobooks. I was like, okay, I'll do it. How hard can it be reading a book that you've written? Went in for the first session. 3 hours later, well, actually, I haven't even got through the first line, and I'm being asked to repeat it 2 or 3 times. And I'm thinking, this is this is going to be a long 14 chapters and 100 odd thousand words. And 3 hours later, I've done less than 2 chapters out of 14. I'm thinking, yeah, this is going to be a long job. But thankfully, I feel like I got better. I feel like I got a bit faster and I articulated a bit better. I realized how badly I spoke and how lazy my reading and articulation was. But yeah, I hope I did get better. Did get speed up, and it'd be interesting when people listen to it to see if they can hear the difference between me at the start of the book and the end of the book.
Well, I agree with your publisher. I think it's fantastic that you've done it. When I reached out to you for this show, I said, "Oh, can you send me the audio book?" Because I knew you'd just done it. You put it on Instagram. I'm like, can you send me that? Because I don't know, I'm not sure I can find time to read, with the kids, but I can go, for my run walk each morning and get it done. But I ended up reading it all on the PDF file you sent me on the computer, which it's not my favorite way to digest a book, but like I said at the top of the show, it was so enthralling that I for 2 to 3 hours in the morning between sort of 4 and 7 when I get up, I just read and just loved every bit of it. How did you choose the specific guests for the book, and were there any that you kind of missed that you would have loved to have had? I mean, you've got cricketers, footballers, swimming, bike, running. You got jockeys, which was fascinating. Golf, Formula One, kayakers, all of that. Was there any? I mean, how did you choose, and then how did you did you miss any?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very. I know it's very Anglo-centric. It's very based around people, obviously, that I could contact relatively easy. I had a list of people that I would have loved to have spoken to, and I had on that list there was people that I could contact relatively easily, and others that I couldn't. I was really aware that I was asking for people's time at the end of the day, and didn't want to abuse that in any way. I was asking for a favor, basically for my own good, and so. Yeah, some people were absolutely fantastic and came back absolutely, I'd love to help and get on board, and other people, I ummed and ahed for a little bit, and maybe we got there, maybe we didn't, and I didn't push anyone, or I hope I didn't push anyone on it, but that was the kind of way I went about it. So I started off with a long list, and it got shorter. I think the other thing is initially I would have loved to have travelled more to actually do it face to face. I would have, for example, loved to have travelled to Norway to run with Kilian Jornet and do, and be able to experience that for myself. Also, write about it. Obviously, life and kind of trying to get the schedules together of two athletes, and then especially as the pandemic started coming along was super difficult. So that was the main thing I would have liked to have done more of. But yeah, the people I did get to speak to, I'm very, very grateful for. And I think it's a relatively diverse bunch of people. I would have liked, on reflection, for it to be a bit more diverse in a number of ways. And I think it is a nice balance. But there's plenty more people out there I could talk to for another one.
But I think well, yeah, I think there's potential for, like you said, the next book, which is going to be you going and spending a day with these people, and that's kind of what this podcast has been for me. It's a bit of the same kind of thing. It's this. I understand every time I reach out to somebody like yourself that I'm taking your time, and it's quite and it's very hard, isn't it? Where's the line of where you're overstepping, but you're fascinated to want to talk with these people, and like you, I want to spend a day with these athletes and then have a beer with them in the evening and record a show. That's so maybe you and I can tee something up together.
Yeah,
going forward. But I mean, you have in your book, you have old school athletes, you have new school, you have endurance athletes, you have power sprint athletes, you have ball sport. You really do. You did a great job of diversifying. I love when you have someone like an Ian Botham, cricketer, beefy, and anybody who doesn't know cricket, which I'm sure there's plenty of you in the US. But he was an outstanding all-round English cricketer during the time when England were rubbish at everything. And I don't mean that to be too condescending, but there was a period where if you weren't beating England or Britain, you were kind of sucking in sport. And now Britain is leading the world in so many areas. But Ian Botham was just this, I loved it in the book. He's just this old school guy going on, I don't believe in psychology. And then he goes on talking about how he, visualizes. And I mean, I think it's great, but I thought it was fascinating. And then you have sort of the new school cricketers and the way Alistair Cook, the greatest English batsman. I enjoyed that comparison, that looking at the old school and new school.
Yeah, I mean, that was done on purpose, as it possibly could have been, in terms of putting those two together. Absolute antagonists of each other's philosophy, as you put it, old school and new school. And yeah, that was brilliant. I mean, that was part of the super interesting thing for me. I've met them both at various events over the years and know them pretty well. With Beefy, I know him and his family a bit, and went to sit at his house, which is in a gorgeous place, actually not that far from where I live. And we sat outside in the garden and just sat and had a few drinks as we chatted through. And you'll know the skill, interviewing is a skill, and one that I had to learn very quickly. There's lots of difficulties, I think, especially face to face, actually, because you're trying to have that conversation and it's hard to make notes and look at things while you're having that conversation. With Ian Botham, it wasn't really so much of an interview. We sat down and it was, this is what I want to tell you about. And it was, it was fantastic in its own way, because that's what, you want people to tell you what they want to tell you and just set off. And it was a great couple of hours of my life, just listening to me. And I'm not, some people might say this disrespectfully, but I'm definitely not. But listening about a completely, as you said, another era in sport, one that I know very little about, really, because it happened before I was born or when I was very young. So, but yeah, I just really enjoyed listening.
That's brilliant, and I think that's some of those experiences that you'll take away from the book, whether you sell 1 million copies or not. It's like, you got to do this. You actually got to have the gift of your gold medals, and the gift of your status is that you open the door to be able to have these conversations with these remarkable human beings, and that's really special. A quick mini break to remind you of the show's incredible partners. You can get 10% off all Hyperice products using the exclusive Greg Bennett Show discount code GREG21 at checkout. Go to hyperice.com and use code GREG21. A quick reminder to do yourself a favor and sign up to Athletic Greens. Athletic Greens also makes a great gift for any family member or friend. So sign up now and get a free year's supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. If you want to see all your key metrics like pace, distance, stroke rate, and heart rate while you swim, you need the Form Smart Swim goggles. Go to formswim.com/Greg. That's formswim.com/Greg and get $15 off. Or you can use code GREG2021 at checkout. Is there anything that when you reflect back, that you learnt from these people that maybe you didn't know going in? Is there anything that kind of stood out to you?
I think, so firstly, like you said at the start, there's quite a lot of things when you go through a process like this that you might already know, but just having them reiterated and highlighted to you, or you might maybe not know, you know somewhere subconsciously, intrinsically, things like the genius label is often a bit defamatory, and Ronnie puts that best, but almost everyone I talked to in some way or another said that brilliance label, or as it was for Ronnie O'Sullivan, the snooker player, genius label, is a bit disrespectful of all the hard work and everything I put into my sport and my craft. So hearing that from people who I think are superhuman, have achieved performances and stuff way above what I've achieved was brilliant. I think hearing that everyone, every single one of those people in one way or another had their own fallibilities. They weren't infallible. They had their own worries. They had their ups and downs. They had their good days and bad days. They had their worries on the start line. I didn't always put that stuff in, but it was always present. Maybe apart from Ian Botham, actually, he had the ultimate confidence and conviction in everything he did, which was phenomenal to hear about in its own way. One of my quotes that I think I really loved was one of his, was you ride the torpedo to the end of the tube, which I took to mean, once you go down a route, you go down it with absolute conviction, which is something I strongly believe in as well. Actually, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You make a decision and then you commit to that decision, and the success of the decision kind of relies not necessarily on the decision at that point, but how your commitment and conviction to that decision is important. And that's kind of one of the reasons why what I took from that quote. Many people might take many other things. So that I absolutely love spending time with the jockeys, a world that I'll happily admit I knew very little about, but just the amount that they effectively race, what they go through, where we talk about maybe tens of races at the most in a year, jockeys are talking about that in a week, if not a few days, a bank holiday weekend. And that you count wins of these big guys in the thousands, and you count, they lose a lot more than they win. So even AP McCoy, the most successful jockey ever, who won a championship jockey title, which is best jockey for 20 years in a row, 20 years, thousands, 4,500 or more. I can't remember the exact number, but wins you end up in, but you end up with way more losses, obviously, and a lot of falls and a lot of broken bones, and a lot of horrific injuries. And he told me that ultimately it was about kind of sacrifices, being super selfish, but more than anything, being really level-headed. Like, you don't celebrate your victories too much, and you don't get too upset by your losses, and you just move on to the next race, which in the jockey's case is later that day, and then you've got 3 tomorrow. So just an amazing perspective. And another thing with Killian Jornet, which I like, he had a few great perspectives. He speaks really humbly about actually sport is ultimately trying to beat other people for our own self-gratification, and it's not that important. And he puts that in context of what he does in climbing mountains and seeing the natural world around him. But I was really trying to, decision making and how we make effective decisions is something that really fascinates me under pressure at the right time. And so I was really interested to ask him, how do you know you're making the correct decisions when it's life and death and you're psychologically impaired at 8,000 meters of altitude due to low oxygen? And he has this great line of saying, well, effectively at that point, all I can do is make it really binary. I ask myself, is it yes or no? Is continuing up here going to kill me? If the answer is no, you keep going. And you just think, just the perspective really of a triathlon decision of, should I take water at the next aid station, or maybe should I attack at this point of the bike? He just kind of puts it in perspective a little bit.
Yeah, I found him fascinating. And actually, there's a quote. Let me see if I have it here, because it's on perspective a bit. The Killian Jornet, and he says, where is it here? I don't think what we do, is anything important. He tells me quietly. It's sport, so in many ways, it's a game, and we are doing something that is very selfish. It's for the emotion at the end. It's nothing productive. We are not like teachers that are forming a new generation of people, or doctors helping people live. What I loved about that is, here he is being probably one of the greatest ultra, endurance athletes on the planet, going around hitting every fastest known time out there, 2 times Everest in a week. Blew my mind. But he's very down to earth. He celebrates the journey and the process. far more than the destination, more than any other athlete I think I've ever heard from. So I really enjoyed his perspective on it all. And the jockeys, I think one of my favorite parts of the whole book was reading about these jockeys and just being like, oh my gosh, how many broken bones. And they're talking about it's the only sport in the world where 2 ambulances follow right behind. And then you sum it up going, I think I'm going to go delete every post on my social media where I've complained about a sprained ankle or a broken toe, because these guys, you listed out in the book every broken bone, and they talk about, I think it was AP McCoy, and he said, look, I'm lying there, broken bones on the ground, and going, yeah, it was probably about a matter of time because it has been a little while since I last fell and really hurt myself. It's like, oh my God, just fascinating stuff. And then the final thing, which you touched on at the beginning there, genius or talent being labeled, and how that is almost disrespectful. And it was nearly everybody there. And I think that becomes, we have to ask the question, what is talent? What is be a genius? And that got me really thinking about it, because I think we think of talent as a physiological or physical sense, but I think the sports science out there is starting to delve what's between the ears more, and your book really dived into that, about is the genius actually between the ears, and the ability to handle more suffering or be able to do more, or would you say that was kind of one of the big takeaways as well?
Yeah, I've, as I'm sure you have, and many listeners have had this debate about, is talent important? What is talent? How do you see talent? Many times on bike rides and in the pub, and it's something that fascinates me. And ultimately, there was actually probably a bit more science that started off in some of the early kind of ideas and notes on the book, and I didn't put it in to make it more readable, and just because at the end, I just thought it actually didn't work that well in context, but it's something that I would actually like to write a lot more about in the future. But yeah, we could do a podcast on its own about what we think talent is, and ultimately it is, I think, a combination of the physical and the psychological, the environmental factors and the non-environmental factors, your genes. I think the really interesting question is where the significance lies and what percentage of makeup each is, and is that different in different people? We all got ways of maximizing things that are different, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that is an enormous topic in its own right.
Well, I think the book left me asking, that question, what is talent, but also what is a champion and what is success? And with all the varying personalities that you interviewed, there were some people that were just incredibly ruthless and relentless. What was the lady's name we were talking about with Beryl?
Yeah.
You leave that one, just go, wow, she wouldn't let her own daughter hop in the car to go to nationals. She had to ride there. Just that kind of, it's one thing to have sibling rivalry like you do with Johnny, but I was like, what? But there's this, you talk about, some of them are obsessed and addicted. Some of them less so. Some of them were more humble, but still had tremendous work ethic and passion and dedication and just desire and mutual respect for the competitors. But it left me kind of going, what is a champion? I mean, is it somebody that just wins all the time, or is it somebody the way they play the game? And I think Mark Webber, the Formula One driver, stood out for me on that. I think you and I both are good friends with Mark, and I think he probably could have had more world titles and things, but I think he was a great sportsman. I think he respected the others and he respected the game, but he would never do anything beyond that, I think. And did you find that a bit the same? There's a kind of a mix of personalities there?
Yeah, and that's kind of particularly the line of questioning I went down with Mark, just because, it obviously his career and it's interesting, and obviously some of the really famous moments of his career are clashing with teammates and potentially, letting that letting that go. I think when I was listening to the question there, I think you used two words, and one was sportsman and the other was champion. And I think I would potentially define those in slightly different ways. That's not to say other people have to. I would probably define that. And yeah, we already, most of us define sportsman in some shape or form. We say sportsmanship, conduct and behavior. And that's kind of the context I would put sportsman-like in it. I would have champion as a slightly more hard-edged to it, as someone who won more. But yeah, that would be my definitions. And yeah, I think it's different for different people.
No, it really just got me thinking about, I mean, we tend to put our, champion athletes on pedestals, and basically we think, okay, they're very, very good at doing one thing very, very well. But I think we make the mistake in society going, well, hang on, we put them on this pedestal that this is the way that you should live your life. And it's like, well, that's not exactly true. And it is hard for an athlete to be at the top of the world and be a good person and do, lead by example and blah, 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 and be a role model for the kids. And, I think of people like a Michael Phelps here in the US, and the greatest probably Olympian in history. And immediately we put him on a pedestal that he's meant to be how we all want to, have our kids aspire to. And then he gets a DUI and he gets caught, smoking pot, and all of a sudden it's like, hang on, and they tear him down. And I think we can make this mistake by putting these people that have been absolutely obsessed to do one thing very, very well and expect them to be all around great human beings. Do you think you've found that with the people that you've met? Are they great human beings, most of them, or have you found them a little bit on that addictive, obsessed, selfish, ruthless type people?
I think it depends how you define great human beings. I think you're very right in the way of to reaching the top of your sport. You have to have a lot of those attributes: selfishness, obsession, drive, that might make you not great human beings in lots of other walks of life, in terms of being compassionate and empathetic, etc., etc., which I think is how you're setting it out. But I just think, I think firstly, it is a function of the world that, you might be really good at one thing, and it's you've put into the public spotlight. And I always saw that, I never did triathlon to be rich and or famous. As a 12-year-old, I was training very hard, and I certainly wasn't doing triathlon to be rich and or famous. That wasn't something that would have factored into someone's psyche at the time. And yet it became, around after the Olympics, that all of a sudden people in the street are, recognizing you, and it's this crazy situation that you never thought would happen. You could look at that in many ways. My opinion on it was, firstly, that gives me a real responsibility, and an opportunity, and that responsibility is, I can inspire people and young people to to exercise and be active and maybe get what I've got out of sport, which is fantastic. And obviously the opportunity around being commercial and getting sponsors and stuff as well. And I think there's a lot to be said, knowing what arena you're in and being a different person in those arenas, and in the sporting arena, to try and win, to be ruthless to the right extent, and to be competitive, and obsessive, and to do all those things to try and be a good sports person. But at the same, there's plenty of room in life outside that to try and be a human being in different ways. And that's what I've tried to do in setting up a charity. Johnny and I knew after 2012 getting asked to go into every single school in the country, and inspire kids all over, up and down the UK, and that's fantastic. And we realised we had this not only opportunity but massive responsibility to do it, and that's what we tried to do through the foundation, which has taken up loads of time, effort, energy, and in various other ways. So Yeah, I think there's room for us all as human beings. And I think most of us know that you can act differently at work as you do with your family and friends and various kind of compartments, I guess. And I think that's the case for a lot of athletes.
I think you put it right just there. I think the ability to compartmentalize the various areas of your life, and some people do it better than others. And I think there's many of these athletes that I talk to or that are in your book that struggle with the compartmentalizing, and it spills over outside into their life. But I love how you do it. There's a quote that I want to read out to you that I enjoyed in the book, and it was, I guess it's talking about being ruthless. And we mentioned Beryl Burton at the top of the show, but this is with your brother Johnny at the Rio Olympics with a couple of kilometers remaining, and you were neck and neck and you were ahead of the field. And this is what the book says. It says, Johnny was first to break the silence. Relax, he said, between deep intakes of breath. My ears pricked up. It was just one word, but knowing him as I do, it was far more than that. It was a tell. He was struggling. Go, 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 something inside me screamed, and I did, cranking up the pace, kicking on and embracing the agony, because whatever hell I was suffering, I knew with certainty of 1,000 training runs that Johnny was feeling it just that little bit more. We're brothers. We've trained together for years. He's been instrumental in getting me to where I am today. Without our rivalry, I'd be half the athlete. Yet here I was, preying on his weakness. Do I regret it? Not at all. I like to think he'd have done the same. And that's the ruthlessness I believe is essential component in all champions, in the arena of competition, just as importantly in their daily life too. I mean, I love that, because you painted a really good illustration of the importance of this is what we're here to do, and it's all in. And that one word when he said relax, it was like, he's in trouble. I enjoyed that part. So well done. There's so many great little moments and captions in that. And when I listened to the book, when I read the book, I ended up taking 20 pages of notes. It was just that much. But some of the great quotes that really jumped out, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling on a little bit here, but you can probably tell me a little bit more. But there's one where it talks about self-belief with Michael Owens, the incredible footballer for England and Liverpool. I remember when he jumped on the field at 17, and just an incredible soccer player for Australian and Americans. I'll just read his quote here. He says, genetically, we've all got what we're given. Some people have got a pair of big lungs, some loads of fast twitch muscle fibers. You're born with that, and you're not going to be able to change that. Not really. After that, you've got to make the absolute best of what you've been given. The decisions you make, what you do with that frame, your determination, how courageous you are. And that's all in the mind. It's all between the ears. So in my case, I had masses of power, real speed in short bursts. I was not good at long distance running. I was only 5'8" and 11.5 stone, but I had a massive dollop of self-belief. That's what made me get better results than possibly I should have done. If you just looked at me as in a physical sense, if you typed ideal footballer into the computer, you'd probably come out with Cristiano Ronaldo. But what got me to the top of my game was that self-belief. Confidence versus self-belief. Confidence is fleeting, self-belief stays. That was a side note to that. What are your thoughts when you hear that self-belief? Is that something that you feel like you've had your whole life? It's not just confidence, it's self-belief?
Yeah, I think I have. And I'd never heard it explained like Michael put it. And I really enjoyed that articulation of it, that there's a difference of self-belief and confidence. And it immediately made kind of a lot of sense to me. The way that confidence is fleeting and comes and goes, and is to an extent a function of how good the last couple of weeks of training might have been, or the last few sessions, and self-belief was something much deeper and more ingrained in you. And I'd never heard it said like that, and I liked it. And I think that just kind of explains quite a lot about the sporting world.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that. And then there was another one here where I've spoken a lot about it on this podcast where, I'm a big believer in visualizing and the ability of emotions, hormones affecting emotions or vice versa. And you interviewed Anna Hemmings, who I hadn't heard of before, but Olympic kayaker and become a speaker. And I enjoyed this quote. So there's a lot of work being done around this. When we are in a positive state, when we experience positive emotions, not just positive thoughts, but positive emotions, we trigger the production of, I'm going to get this word wrong, dehydropiandosterone, DHEA. I got that completely wrong.
I had to say that in the audio book. I think it's about 10%.
It's in the adrenal glands. And it says this hormone is a performance enhancer. It generates energy and boosts the immune system. Whereas when we feel negative emotion, we're triggering cortisol, the so-called stress hormone. Frustration, anger, fear, and anxiety all release cortisol. And when cortisol levels are increased over a long period of time, there are a lot of health implications. So we're talking not just about performance, but health. I really feel like we're just tapping into this. I think as human beings, we're going a long way with the physical. But throughout your book, you talk a lot about the ability to train the brain to handle more and more suffering. I think Chris Froome talks a lot about that. And forgive me, the psychologist in the book, what was his name?
There's a Professor Laverley, but I think it's actually more of a physiologist. He's Professor Makora, who we talk about.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes. I really enjoyed what he was saying a lot about that, and I feel like we've only just scratching the surface on the ability of the mind and the emotions and hormones and how that can impact performance. Do you step away from this book going, there's more I can do going forward in terms of, visualizing or the way I affect, the emotions have a direct impact on your physiology?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more I can do, and it's definitely something I've kind of realized over the last few years as I've tried to kind of maximize my performance of a more of an aging body, looking at how to maximize that and how to do that to the best of my ability. And it's I've kind of experimented with almost every innovation in some shape or form that's probably happened over the last 10 years. But at the same time, I'm a massive advocate for having context around you, really being able to understand the science to its base level, understand what the statistics are telling you, understand what your own anecdotal evidence around you, contextualizing all of that and trying to come up with a solution or an attempt, and then constantly looking at it as you go along to try and gauge success. And that's something that has kind of always guided me a lot. But I think the book in lots of ways opened my eyes to all kinds of new things and new ways of going about things and new things to try and new insights to try and contextualize. And some of that we were just talking about there.
I want to wrap up with the book with one last bit, and this was from the Welsh rugby player Shane Williams. And what I loved about this is I've been a big advocate of really focusing on your strengths and outsourcing your weaknesses when you can, or mitigating your weaknesses. Is Dan Eisenhart, the founder of Form Swim Goggles, was on the other week, and he said that's the way they approach it, mitigating your weaknesses. And he said, and Shane Williams, I loved him because he's a small guy, but he still managed to have an incredible rugby career. And he said the pitfalls of working on weaknesses to the detriment of strengths, of becoming a strong all-rounder but average rather than a champion with some manageable flaws. For me, that just summed up, a great way that some of these champions have actually done it. They've really honed in and optimized their strengths. So yeah, I enjoyed every part of the entire book. I want to congratulate you again on it, and everybody do yourself a favor and buy this book. It's definitely worth it. So I want to move on with the show, if that's okay with you, unless there's anything else you want to discuss.
No, that's great, very much. Hopefully we discussed enough to make people interested and interested enough to want to read what's in the rest of it.
Oh, I think we've only scratched the surface, everybody. There's so much good stuff in there. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this special edition with Alistair Brownlee. Please enjoy part 2, where Alistair discusses the Olympics, how the sport of triathlon has changed, his future, and we end with some really fun, rapid-fire questions.
Thanks a lot for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.